looking at, you can see on screen right now, he's made some major accomplishments throughout his career in the Pokemon trading card game, not least the most recently in Orlando, obviously winning with Yveltal Garbodor. So it's an archetype he's very comfortable with, and he's stuck with it here, and he's already 2-0 as we go into the third round.
Yeah, and on the other side we have TJ. He's a very well-known player. He was in the finals of the Boston Open. He is from Canada. He also had decent world standing, so definitely one of the better players here. He also flew over the whole ocean just to come here to play in London. For most US players, this is the first time they ever played any tournament in Europe, so it's great for us to see that this is so interesting. And here they are already starting to go into the game, and TJ starting with Shaman EX, which is usually not really what you want to start with, and Azul opening Yveltal.
Absolutely, and far from the ideal hand. The first play he has to make is the supporter for turn, and it's going to be N. Both players have to shuffle in their hands and draw the equal amount of cards as they have prizes. So it's really not what you want to do. Normally you want to get some bench Pokemon down, start using things like Max Elixir. We saw he had Max Elixir in hand, but without any bench Pokemon, he can't use that yet. So he's going to be worried already because he's not got the ideal start, but he has just found himself a Fright Knight Yveltal, which is going to be helpful here, and then he leads into the Trainer's Mail.
Yeah, this Yveltal decks are very, very interesting. So basically you play just a lot of dark Pokemon that function very well. They don't really work together, but it's just that every dark Pokemon have different attacks that can do different things. And with the Max Elixir that almost everyone is using right now in this deck, you can charge them, then use a double colorless energy card to use attacks like Y-Cyclone or Pitch Black Spear, as we can see here active, presented by both players. TJ just retreats for a Floatstone into his Yveltal with a Fright Knight ability, which says that Pokemon tool cards have no effect. This is a very great ability, so almost everyone includes this in their Darkness decks.
Absolutely, and we've seen him put it straight into the active. No energy for TJ, unfortunately, which I'm sure he would have enjoyed. But putting the Fright Knight in the active maybe would have made it more awkward for Azul to get things like Elixir switching back into the active. But in fact, Azul had a very slow turn. He just attached past. And then TJ goes back to him very quickly as well. We see an escape rope just to get that Shaman back into the active position. Then we see the double colorless energy for a Sky Return. And now we're straight back to Azul. Not very long turns so far. Both players struggling to get set up here.
Yeah, this is a very weird match. It's just now he uses, I don't know if he uses Evil Ball or White Cyclone. Looks like Evil Ball. And well, this is interesting, but now TJ at least has Shaman, so he can just set up for 2. Let's see what he gets. Zorua, which is better than nothing, I guess, but he cannot really use the Max Elixir for really good purpose, because Zorua needs a double colorless energy card to attack, so you don't really want to use the Max Elixir. But here we see N, so hopefully a better hand for Azul here.
Yeah, absolutely. The Zorua coming down. We know that TJ does play one Zoroark Break, but it's not really worth putting the Max Elixir on him just yet. He also thought it was worth holding on to that double colorless energy, feeling that the Fright Knight is currently damaged. There's not much reason to start committing energy to it because it needs a large amount of energy to start attacking. He doesn't really feel that it's going to get value. Instead, he just plays the N, so both players refresh their hands. We do see a manual attachment for turn onto Zorua. We see an Enhanced Hammer, which is a tech that we often see in Yveltal decks. For sometimes the Mirror, there's also a couple other decks where Enhanced Hammer is very good, allows you to get rid of a special energy on your opponent's side of the field. This is going to slow down Azul, even though he was hit with an N, so Azul's more likely to have answers than he had the following turn.
Yeah, this Mirror match, Enhanced Hammer is just a great card, because Y-Cyclone is actually a pretty important attack. It reserves your energy, so you can set up big Evil Balls later without risking to have an Yveltal with a lot of energy cards active. So when you have 2 energies, let's say double colorless energy card and a darkness energy, you usually don't really want to use Evil Ball if it's not enough for a knockout, so you choose Y-Cyclone, but then Enhanced Hammer can knock out the double colorless energy card from either the active or the bench Pokemon to put yourself in a favorable position. And Azul also gets his Max Elixir and energy to his Yveltal with Pitch Black Spear. And yeah, let's see what his other cards are. Ultra Ball. He also got a few cards in his hand, but it doesn't look that great, so he can play Ultra Ball for Shaman EX to draw some more cards, but of course you don't really want to use Shaman EX, and you also don't really want to discard a lot of cards, but when you're forced to do it, you have to. And here we see just Ultra Ball Shaman, and let's see what he's going to do now.
Yeah, it's really awkward for Azul because he's already been put down to a 3 Pokemon bench thanks to TJ's Parallel City. So putting that Shaman EX down is going to really limit his options throughout the game. We are going to see the double colorless get attached to the active Yveltal EX, followed by a Floatstone, obviously currently being shut off by the Fright Knight, but that's likely to get knocked out this turn. So then we just see he's playing these cards down so he can draw more cards from Shaman EX, allowing him to set up. That's the ability which allows the player to draw up to 6 cards after that. And then he actually gets the Lysander off of that setup, and he's going to be able to Y-Cyclone for the knockout on the Zorua, taking the initiative here on the only attacker and the only thing with energy on TJ's board.
Yeah, and here you see the already spoken of Y-Cyclone attack, and you also saw one weird play that you usually don't do. When you have a Pokemon with a Floatstone on your bench, of course, when something gets knocked out, you can just put it active. But because the Floatstone is attached to the Yveltal with the Fright Knight ability, he shuts off his own Floatstone and then can't retreat again. This is why TJ had to think about either he puts his Zora active, but then he would need Zoroark to attack, but when he has Zoroark anyways, he can just use Stand In. So Shaman is the best Pokemon to put active here, I think. The only what you could think about is maybe you want to do something different, but we saw he attached a double colorless energy, so we're most likely going to see a Sky Return anyways. And whatever he promotes will decide what Azul is going to do here. And in this kind of mirror match, it really depends. What you do depends on what your opponent is doing. You have a few mirror matches, for example, Rainbow Road or Rainbow Force, or Volcanion, where both players just knock out and then knock out and knock out again. But in this matchup, everyone has a lot of options, and depending on what options your opponent is using, you have to change your game. And yes, TJ just going for another Sky Return and actually promoting the Pokemon that already got a lot of damage on it.
Yeah, and the one mitigating factor TJ does have is that he could be using Zoroark. As we see, it's just been Lysandered up, the Zorua, so he could have been able to move the Fright Knight even with the Floatstone on. It's an interesting interaction because although it is a mirror match of sorts, TJ's list is vastly different from Azul's because, of course, he is playing the Zoroark line. He's made space for that. So he did have that option available. It may have, in some other games we'll see later on, it might force Azul to try and find the Garbodor first. TJ, we do see him now put down a Trubbish, so he has that option. Now that both of those Zoruas are off the board, it's kind of awkward for him. He's lost quite a good attacker in the mirror match, in my opinion. At the same time, Azul got a very efficient knockout there because he also was able to put 6 damage counters on what is now the active Yveltal EX, and that sets up great numbers for when he wants to use his other attackers later on here. Back into TJ's turn, we see the double colorless energy that he Sky Returned back into his hand, now onto the active Yveltal, and we're seeing him now use Professor Sycamore to try and dig for some more things. Maybe things like Max Elixir are going to be important from this turn onwards, because although Y-Cyclone can reserve some energy, it's also going to be important to hit some of these Max Elixirs to have enough attackers throughout the game. Yeah,
Max Elixir is such an important card. You can see both players play 4 of them in addition to either 8 or 9 Dark Energies. TJ's deck, like you already saw, plays Zoroark, and that means at least 2 Zorua, 2 Zoroarks, and he also added 1 Zoroark break. You have to cut some cards to make space for this, and he only plays 8 Darkness Energy, so the Max Elixir are less valuable in his deck compared to other Yveltal decks. As we see him just going for Evil Ball and taking the knockout on the Fright Knight Yveltal.
Absolutely. So now it passes back over to Azul, and we are going to see him start off with the Ultra Ball. And it's going to be interesting what he looks for. He just chooses to go for a second Shaman EX, so his board is going to be pretty awkward here. The Parallel City is still causing a bit of disruption for Azul. It's one of these things where both players are playing the same stadium, so it's difficult to really mitigate that if the opponent is the first one to get it in. We do see Azul find himself the Fighting Fury Belt, and again we see that set up for some cards. It looks like he was able to get double colorless energy at least, so he'll be attacking for certain this turn.
Yeah, but now the Parallel City prevents Azul from playing even more basic Pokemon, and if this active Yveltal gets knocked out, he will face some problems. He only needs 1 energy card to knock out TJ's Yveltal EX because he didn't have the Fighting Fury, but if he uses this, he has the risk, because if the Yveltal gets knocked out on TJ's side again, because he also just needs a double colorless energy card to take then the knockout, Azul will be in big trouble. So it will be very interesting to see if he either uses Y-Cyclone or Evil Ball.
It looks like we do see the Pokemon Center Lady, which is a huge tech card. We saw this in the winning list from Fort Wayne. Yveltal players utilizing the Pokemon Center Lady, and just like that, the Azul's Yveltal EX is now out of range from TJ's to respond KO, which was otherwise quite likely. So this is a huge turnaround for Azul here, and TJ is going to be the one forced into committing more energy to this guy in the active position, the Yveltal EX. Maybe it's the turn now where TJ, because the Yveltal deck is so versatile, he can start using things like Y Cyclone, again set up a 2-hit KO. But the awkward thing when you start doing that is, we've seen that Azul has the Pokemon Center Lady. That's in the discard pile now for more VS Seekers. So it's going to be awkward for TJ to play around this now.
Yeah, Versus Seeker is such a great card, especially when you have a few or one of supporters. We see in Azul's prizes, there is the Team Flare Ground, which is also a great card in the mirror match, similar to the Enhanced Hammer, can outplay a lot of plays your opponent can do, and of course the Pokemon Center Lady, which is just so great when your opponent is trying to make some very smart knockouts with their Fright Night Yveltal. You can just play, well, Center Lady. Let's see. It also helps against stuff like Bubble and a few things. But in this format where there are a lot of Pokemon that only 2-hit knock out you, Center Lady, in my opinion, is just a great card. Here we see TJ using N. In this situation, of course, very important because Azul only has 2 prize cards left. So if he gets 1 knockout, he wins the game.
Absolutely. So TJ, seeing that, we're seeing the disruption from N. It's such a big card in Yveltal decks because normally with the elixirs and with Y Cyclone, they're often able to keep a good board presence even if they put themselves to a low hand size. It just so happens right now that TJ already has a large hand size because he's only taken 1 prize so far, but mitigating what Azul can do next turn is going to be very important. Because he sort of needs to come back into this game. He's a little bit behind. His board presence isn't even too strong. He's being forced to use an Evil Ball this turn rather than the option of Y Cyclone because he didn't draw into a double colorless energy, so he was forced into this play. As it passes back over to Azul.
Oh,
and
yeah.
He's very happy. He does hit that max elixir straight away, which I'm sure is a big deal right now.
Yeah, TJ's strategy was to play N and then hope the opponent doesn't really get a lot. But now he has the max elixir. I'm also pretty sure he has a Versus Seeker in his hand. This means he can do so many things in his turn. Either usually I think he will play Professor Sycamore, but he has a lot of options. He didn't attach an energy from his hand, so he can set up another Yveltal, and TJ needs to knock out more Pokemon than Azul. So Azul can outplay TJ in this position. The only cards that can really help TJ now are, I think, N in general, because he already uses Enhanced Hammer. There isn't much left he can do.
And Azul is still debating which supporter he would like to use here. He's looking for the discard pile. He's actually looking to carry on as is, I think. Maybe he wants to set up the 2-hit KO on this guy and keep the Versus Seeker in hand so that he can potentially Lysander to finish off the game and deny TJ from anything else. Additionally, TJ is really unaware that Azul has potentially the game-winning hand. He doesn't want to give away something by using the VS Seeker, then going into Professor Sycamore just to get end away again.
Yeah.
So Azul may be doing a bit of a bluff here so that TJ is unaware. He feels pretty comfortable that he doesn't need to end again, and then Azul can take it from there.
Yeah, this is some poker stuff going on here because, well, TJ actually retreats, and yeah, this was something I wanted to say, because if he attacks again, Azul has the energies in play to win anyways.
Absolutely.
So he can just play Professor Sycamore then, or he can use something like Lysander or whatever. But this way, now the benched Yveltal doesn't have enough energies anymore for Azul to be able to play Lysander and then knock it out. So maybe it will backfire here that he didn't use a supporter right away. I mean, he plays against a very strong opponent, so he should know that these kind of things will happen. Now, this is a very interesting game. I really like it so far.
Yeah, the Yveltal mirror match has been claimed to be one of the most tactical, difficult mirrors to play because there's so many plays that both players have available to them. The decks and the interactions these cards have are very intricate, and we're seeing TJ playing to his outs very well with that retreat, noticing that obviously, of course, he had to retreat, but it works on multiple levels now because the Evil Ball is no longer the option that could have won the game for Azul there. So his poker-style play could have come off big. It's still going to be very helpful here. We saw he had to Professor Sycamore regardless, so he's still in a very favorable position here in terms of his board state and still his prize race. He's still ahead. Just needs to take one more EX knockout to finish off the game.
And now Azul is just calculating, is this enough? So it's 170 HP. How much energies are there? 2 on the opponent. Now, and this is enough.
It is.
This is enough. Yeah, I was just going to say, like, yeah, he just needs an energy and then he can knock it out because of the Fighting Fury Belt. He deals the exact amount of damage, 170. So, yeah, TJ, kind of problematic start. Both players didn't have the best start. But then Azul was able to play a few Lysanders early on, denying the option to go for Zoroark, and then just finishing off the game this way.
Absolutely, and I think one of the awkward things for TJ there that we saw very, just even at the very end there, that Fury Belt was prized. 2 Fighting Fury Belts was prized for TJ, and it's such a big deal. It's like we saw with Azul, he used the Pokemon Center Lady, that was his supporter for the turn. Fury Belt is not quite as powerful as Pokemon Center Lady, but it's still a resource to make it more awkward for the opponent to respond KO. Sometimes you even stay out of range from 2-hit KOs, so it forces more resources from the opponent, more max elixirs, more attachments from hand, stuff like that. Had he had those Fury Belts available to him, the matchup could have been very different.
Yeah, this is true. Also, the Perilous City kinda was annoying for Azul to be, because he had 2 Shamans on his bench at some point of the game, and they both don't play any way to get rid of the stadium. Besides, TJ plays 1 Delinquent, but as far as I know, Azul only has...
yeah, just the 2 Parallel Cities for
Yes.
Azul, so it's really in TJ's favor when he wants to deal with Parallel City, if at all. So it looks like we see 1 mulligan from Azul here, which does allow TJ to draw 1 extra card. That's what happens when one player, to start the game, looks at the top 7 cards of their deck, and they do not have any basic Pokemon to put down. It gives the opponent a small advantage by being allowed to draw 1 extra card at the start of the game. And it looks like, of course, we're going to see it start back up here, and we see 2 Yveltal EXs in the active, much better than last time.
Yeah, this is definitely true. Shaman EX start isn't that great. TJ, though, has his Enhanced Hammer prize. He also has 2 Yveltal EX prize, which is very big, because as far as I know, he only plays 3 of them. Azul, though, plays 4, which is not that common, actually. But I really like 4. I think it's great, especially in the mirror match, where you always need them somehow, and then you can Wise Cycle and retreat the right way. But of course, you want your non-EX Yveltals, and you have to get the space somewhere, especially when you play Zoroark like TJ does.
Absolutely, and I think, you know, with prizes like these, with 2 Yveltal EXs prized, I think he's pretty thankful that he has the Zoroark to back up, you know, his attacking power here. We do see 1 Max Elixir hit onto the Zoroark straight away. Saw the attachment into the active as well, so this is going to be really handy, because he needs, obviously, attackers to then access his other attackers, the Yveltal EXs, which are currently prized. So this is going to be awkward to see how TJ does navigate this matchup now. Of course, he does still have the Fright Knight Yveltals, which are still very accomplished attackers, and they're easily capable of taking prizes themselves. So maybe for a straight Yveltal EX list, those prizes would look absolutely terrible, but TJ still has outs here.
Yeah, that's true. So here again, he has the first Perilous City, so Azul in a bit disadvantage. Yeah, he got 1 of the Max Elixirs on his Zorua. I like, well, having the Darkness Energy helps the Zoroark break, otherwise you need to attach another Darkness Energy. But also, this is one interesting thing, when you have the Zoroark break, you can also attach a double Colors Energy card and then use Evil Ball if you really want to. Or you can just use Wise Cycle and move the only energy you have attached back to your bench, dealing 90 damage. But Azul has a very fast turn again. Just, well, here, Team Flagrant, your turn, have fun. He attached an energy, but yeah, let's see what's going to happen now.
And I think Azul does have playable cards. I think I can see him flicking through his hand. He does have Trainer's Mail at the very least, so he was very content to Team Flagrant. It almost puts him as if he started the game here, because he doesn't feel in danger of any knockouts from TJ once that Flagrant comes down, or even receiving any damage. So being able to take the initiative here with the Team Flagrant, almost saying, you know what, I'm the one who's gone first here, because I've got rid of your energy, which is a fundamental part of Pokemon. Each turn you can attach an energy card. So Azul kind of whiffing on the Trainer's Mail, not finding exactly what he needs, but at the very least he can go for another Team Flagrant here.
Yeah, Azul's hands is actually very good. He has Shaman EX, I'm also pretty sure he does have Professor Sycamore. But I mean, what is TJ going to do? Attach energy to Zoroark and then stand in for 10? Or he would really need like a Float Stone, then an energy, and hit an Max Elixir. So a lot of cards, especially because when it was Azul's turn, where he played a Flagrant, TJ didn't even have the Zoroark. So Azul knew, like, well, when my opponent really wants to do something, he needs so many cards at once. Just play Team Flagrant, go the safe way, discard some energies, especially knowing that his opponent is most likely playing less energy cards because of the Zoroark stuff.
And we're seeing a third use of Team Flagrant in the first 3 turns from Azul, doing absolutely brilliantly, getting rid of these energy cards. But that means that his supporter for the turn was not maybe something like Professor Sycamore to then dig for maybe the float stone, in which case he could have done more damage. But bear in mind that he was only using Evil Ball for 80 the first time, so he would have had to keep committing to the Yveltal EX. Maybe I would have quite liked to see that sort of aggressive play to really take the emphasis of the game, but at the same time, we know that N is a huge factor here, and if Azul had been pumping up a load of energy onto just one Yveltal EX, it then makes him weak to things like Enhanced Hammer and being hit with an N straight away again. So Azul taking the cautious approach, continuing to use Team Flare Grunts, and TJ struggled so far. He's been able to put down a Fright Knight Yveltal in his turn, and then he's hit Azul with an N.
Yeah, I mean, the Y-Cyclone would have been enough for Azul, but yeah, like already said, he has the kind of upper hand. He can just kind of control TJ here. Also, TJ is on the lower end of the whole power thing because he has to move, he has to do something. All these Pokemon don't really look like they can really do a lot. And also one thing that I would like to mention is that when you have the choice between N and Sycamore, and all your opponent have been done for 3 turns, it's just Team Flare Grunt Pass, you don't really want to play the N.
Absolutely, yeah. It's almost like TJ, it's one of those backfire cards where you think N is going to be really helpful when your opponent has a great hand, but when we know Azul did have a good hand, but TJ couldn't see that he had such a useful hand. He was just Team Flare Grunting each turn and having a slower approach, so TJ may have been sort of worried about using the N in the first place. Over to Azul's turn, we are going to see the Ultra Ball, and he's going to be grabbing himself a Fright Knight Yveltal, which is just the one of that he plays in his list. As we've already mentioned, he is playing 4 Yveltal EXs, and he too is going to play the N now to refresh his hand. We see the double colourless energy get attached to the Fright Knight, so he's having multiple attacking options now, and that's going to really help out. TJ has commit a Fighting Fury Belt to the active, so that means that it's going to be a little bit more difficult to take the knockout here, and having the Zoroark in the back might mean that he's able to move his Yveltal out of the active next turn, so it's going to be interesting to see how Azul wants to play his turn here. Looks like he is going to go for the Shaman and retreat that with the Float Stone, and he's just going to go for the Evil Ball.
Yeah, now TJ finally got a Fighting Fury Belt in a situation where it actually made sense, because the Wild Cyclone would have been enough for the knockout. He could have moved just the Darkness Energy, even though, like we already mentioned, this would be a risk because of Enhanced Hammer. And speaking of this kind of stuff, Azul actually kind of has a very great list for the mirror match. He plays 2 of the Enhanced Hammer, he plays the Team Flare Grunt, the Center Lady, and also 4 Yveltal EX. So everything is going right for him in the mirror match. And you can see this here. His list really shines in this matchup. And we talked a lot about this, but Yveltal might be the most played deck from good players, because it's just one of these decks where you can have so many options, and when you are a skillful player, you can change so much by playing better compared to, for example, a Rainbow Force deck where almost every turn you have to kind of attack and then that's it. But here you have a lot of Pokemon you can choose from, and even your only Pokemon, they all have different attacks that you can choose from. So you don't just choose between, what do I use, Zoroark, do I use Yveltal, do I use Yveltal EX? But when you have Zoroark active, you have to choose between, well, here in this situation, for example, he can either use attack with the Break or attack with Mind Jack. And when you have Yveltal active, you can either attack with Y-Cyclone or with Evil Ball. And then when you have Y-Cyclone, you need to choose, do I take the Darkness Energy or do I take the Double Colors Energy? And then which Pokemon to attach this to. So a lot of things going on each turn. So it's a very hard deck to play, but when you can play it, I think this puts you in a great advantage at these tournaments.
Absolutely. It's one of those decks, as you say, it rewards good play. Because of the options, you can choose the best one, and that's what the best players are trying to do here. Now, the Zoroark Break is actually a pretty handy card in the mirror match, in my opinion, because it does have a good sizable amount of HP with 140, difficult to get knocked out on his own, and that Foul Play is an efficient attack, so it does allow TJ to start getting max elixirs and commit manual attachments to his benched Pokemon to try and have plenty throughout the game. And we haven't seen any hint of Garbodor from this game or the previous game, so he does have that stand-in ability available to him as well, just to get into that active position. We see the Float Stone on the Zoroark Break, so that can go in and out of the active position whenever he wishes, really, so that's very helpful to him. We see the double colourless energy get attached to the Fright Knight Yveltal, and it looks like he's considering a Max Elixir, which is also in his hand currently, before he does go for... It looks like he's going to go for a Foul Play here. It's going to be interesting to see which attack he chooses to go for. It's a very mathsy matchup here. It depends really what he's looking to do in the following turns. Looks like he does go for the Y-Cyclone. It forces more commitment from Azul here if he wants to get over the Zoroark Break, so I do like this option.
Yeah, it's very cool, to be honest, because this way Azul Well, okay, we see Enhancer, but this way Azul needs to play differently. He cannot just Evil Ball knockout. He needs one more energy at least if he really wants to go for it. And the other option would have been Evil Ball, which I think would have been almost as much damage.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
so
it would have been 100 damage, so that doesn't make that big of a difference between 100 or 90 damage. And this way TJ sets up his bench Pokemon to then use Pitch Black Spear in the other turn again. And also, when he makes sure that his Zoroark Break doesn't get knocked out, he can always use the floats, of course, unless there is a Frightened Evital active, he can always use Stand and Floats to retreat.
Yeah, absolutely. So Azul is going to be playing the N here for some recycle. We see his commitment of turn attachment to the Fright Knight Yveltal, so he's looks like he's going to be content to Y-Cyclone this turn, and he wants to find another bench Pokemon ready to have a good target, because right now he doesn't have many good targets to move energy onto, so it's going to be interesting to see if he gets any of those from the N. Otherwise, he might be in a bit of a spot here.
Yeah, we also see in TJ's hand he has a Darkness Energy, so if Azul doesn't have a Fighting Fury Belt and doesn't retreat, TJ again can use Y-Cycling for the knockout for Zoroark Break, which would be, I think, a very great move.
Ooh, it looks like
and
he's...
Azul is having a very hard decision to make here, and he has to be fast, because if he does not win this game, this might actually end up in a tie, because mirror matches usually, at least these tactical mirror matches, usually tend to take a lot of time.
Absolutely. So he does opt to put down the Yveltal EX so that he is able to Y-Cyclone onto it. Just going to deal the 90 damage onto the Zoroark Break. So we see that good HP and the fact that TJ moved the energy off it. It's going to be able to take a 2-for-1 almost here on the EX Pokemon. So this is a real swing, I think, for TJ. And we're going to see him now use a Super Rod. He's going to get back in a Zorua as well as 2 Dark Energy. Those Dark Energy are going to be helpful for not only finding more manual attachments throughout the game, but if there are any more Max Elixirs in his deck, he's improved his odds here. So the Super Rod is often a tech card you see, or it's just a consistency card really, just making sure that you can get back resources and attackers, because bear in mind, there are still 2 Yveltal EXs in his prize cards, so TJ has to be aware that there's enough attackers for him throughout the game if he were to be unlucky and not find any more Yveltal EXs.
Yeah, especially, and now one earlier decision might come down at a disadvantage for Azul, because in an earlier turn he used Evil Board instead of Y-Cyclone on the Yveltal EX, which is now on the bench with 160 damage, so he doesn't have the option to just put Yveltal active, then take it to prize cards because of the Fright Knight ability, and then knock out some other stuff. And especially here...
Ooh, it's an interesting play from TJ. He's opting to go for the Lysander, bringing up the one with the double colorless energy on, and he's going to go for the Pitch Black Spear for the double 60 on the EX Pokemon. This means that Azul can sort of respond with the attachment, but it forces the Evil Ball, and I think that's what TJ's thinking here. Forcing the Evil Ball so that if he just finds one more double colorless energy on his second Fright Knight that TJ has on his bench, he can do a lot better work here, finish off the damaged Yveltal EX that's on the bench now, and it sets up the Zoroark Break for the rest of the game. So I think dealing with these attackers is going to be really handy. TJ does have a couple of EX Pokemon on his side of the field as well that can get punished by Fright Knight, so it's going to be a really tactical war, I think, in this regard. And I think playing the Lysander means that he's not worried about N for a few more turns. There's plenty of reasons why he would have gone for this play, in my opinion.
But there are also a few problems, because now he cannot use Foul Play for Evil Ball for the knockout, because that's only a 100 damage, so that's 160, 10 less than he would need, and then again there would be Evil Tower with 160 damage, which then again can just Y-Cycle and put the energy to another Pokemon. And also the Fright Knight Evil Tower, if he decides to attach an energy to the bench Fright Knight Evil Tower TJ has, it will just get knocked out again, even though TJ then can drop 2 prize cards to the benched Yveltal EX, but then there's still the active one, so this seemed to be a weird turn. I was actually, when he put down the Lysander, I was just expecting that he had the Enhanced Hammer for kind of locking down everything, and now TJ does play the Pokemon Center Lady, and now he can use either Y-Cyclone or Evil Ball, but I guess we will see the Y-Cyclone, and here it is, attaching energy to the benched.
He has an awkward decision.
He hasn't decided yet. Both Pokemon don't really like to have the energy. For just the double colors energy card, the Fright Knight can attack already. So if you attach the Darkness energy and then only have double colors to attach, it's kind of a waste. You also... but on the other hand, when you attach the energy to your damaged Yveltal, it can just get knocked out by the Fright Knight from Azul now, in this situation, for example, even though I think it's unlikely. But let's see what's going to happen here.
Yeah, it's over to Azul's turn now, and he has a decision. I think this might not be a bad turn at all to go for a Pitch Black Spear, but again, This Zoroark is putting in a lot of work for TJ.
Yeah, because if he goes
really
for
good.
Pitch Black Spear now,
Yeah.
he can just copy Pitch Black Spear, then
Yep.
dealing 60 to the active, and then knocking out either of the Eviltars.
Yeah.
So depending on Azul, he would need to put another energy to just not lose the race. He cannot bench any more Pokemon. So if he takes to any bench Pokemon, TJ can copy Pitch Black Spear and then knock out the exact Pokemon with had more energy cards. But we just see Azul here taking the knockout with Evil Ball. And I like this play a lot. Of course, we don't know which hand cards he had, so we couldn't really see that he has a double color synergy, especially because this is the third one he even have in play. And now TJ has a lot of options, and it looks like he's just going for the N again, even though this time it's not that powerful, and Azul's board position is great.
Yeah, Azul's board position is absolutely brilliant. TJ definitely going to be needing to dig for double color synergy, most likely is what he needs. It's interesting that he chose to use the N here, drawing one less card, obviously, than the Professor Sycamore that was in his hand. But I think he wants both things at once. He wants to slow Azul's just sort of steamrolling right now. He's getting a lot of energy on the board. The presence is, miles ahead of TJ right now, at least. And it looks like he's not been able to find double colors energy, so potentially that N play, trying to slow down Azul as well as get the outs, could have been a little bit too greedy from TJ. At the same time, though, he does at least have the darkness energy to go for the Evil Ball here. So he is going to be taking the 2 prizes, and we'll see what he gets here. Looks like he still has not picked up his 2 other Yveltal EXs, so this is really awkward for TJ. A heavily damaged Yveltal EX in the active position when Azul already has Fright Knight ready to go.
Yeah, he just not has Fright Knight ready to go. He has a double Fright Knight, in theory double Fright Knight, and then he wins the game when he just takes a knockout on the Shaman. Yeah, so if Azul decides to go for Pitch Black Spear, which I think is very likely in this situation, even though he can also attack with Evil Ball and then kind of save his energies on the Fright Knight Eviltal, is kind of unlikely that TJ is able to knock it out. I think he would need a Max Elixir and a double colorless on an Eviltal EX, which he doesn't even have because both of them are in the prize cards. So Pitch Black Spear could just seal the game here by just attacking twice. And also Azul playing the Center Lady, denying TJ's Pitch Black Spear. So again, Pokemon Center Lady from TJ could get rid of the damage on the Shaman. So then if TJ has a double colors energy and then knocks out the benched Eviltal, Azul would be again in a problematic situation. But I think this should be the game for Azul. It's very unlikely that TJ goes out here. And of course, he cannot promote the Shaman with the Flowstone because Fright Knight is active again. And let's see what's going to happen now.
I think promoting the Shaman EX may have been his best out just for a Sky Return play because it
this
looks
true,
like it's already there for Azul.
He does have a double colorless and a Versus Seeker in his hand though, so if he does not play Center Lady, now it seems just like a
so it looks
weird
like Center
play.
Lady is now his out. Otherwise, he would have had to have gone for the Sky Return. So TJ really backed into a corner here because he's not going to be able to knock out Azul's current Fright Knight Yveltal. So looks like he's debating putting down Shaman to draw some cards first, figure out what outs he has fully. The Fighting Fury Belt would have been nice, but I mean, there's a Fright Knight in the active anyway, and he already has a tool, so there's many reasons why that's not too helpful right now.
I'm wondering why he didn't play Versus Seeker for Center Lady before he used up setup, because that would give him 1 extra card, and I don't really see him taking the knockout. He already attached an energy card, so and he should know that there is no Eviltal EX in the stack, so I don't really see him having any options, so that would have given him 1 extra card, which he might have needed later on to finish the game, because especially when you use a Pitch Black Spear now, it's not even a 2-hit knockout because it's only 60 damage.
Yeah, we do see him.
Even if he has the Fighting Fury, but it doesn't work because of his own Fright Knight ability. And now let's see what Azul is going for. He needs a lot of stuff, I think. But yeah, I don't have enough time to think about all of this here. He cannot knock out the Fright Knight, but if Azul has another Center Lady, he can just Fright Knight twice again. And then TJ would need a Versus Seeker again. But I remember Azul playing a lot of Versus Seeker earlier for Flare Grunts in this game. So it might become a problem.
I think the Enhanced Hammer again is really crucial there for Azul because now he can allow TJ to keep the Fright Knight into the active position. So he doesn't need to go for something like a risky Lysander play where you could bring up the Shaman EXs. One could be Sky Return, the other could be Protected. We just see the Flare Grunt, so now the Fright Knight is stuck in that active position. If TJ is going to commit any double colorless energies, it has to be to the Fright Knight to retreat. So it looks like this Shaymin EX is stranded on the bench, which is exactly where Azul wants it, so that he can put enough counters to finish off TJ and take his last 2
Azul
prizes.
was thinking, does he put the damage on the Floatstone Shaymin or the other one? But TJ doesn't have any way to get rid of the damage, no way to knock out the Evital with Fright Knight in this turn, so he doesn't need to feel the pain anymore, just scoops the game to Azul, and Azul is now 3-0 in this tournament. It seems very great because he didn't lose any game today yet, but you have to keep in mind we play 15 rounds in total, so there was a lot, like 12 rounds to go for him. But yeah, that was very cool games, even though they didn't really work well for TJ.
Yeah, it's a shame for TJ. I'm sure when that front Yveltal is going, the one thing you want to have is Yveltal EXs ready, because those are really the best answer to the Fright Knight Yveltal, and 2 being prized is really